There we go.
All right. And we are live. What's up? And welcome to another episode of the Live Clean and Fight Dirty show. Here with your main host, UFC coach John Hackleman, and your co host, me, Angelo Ferrer. So today, our title is Overtraining versus Undertraining. What's worse? Getting into a fight and feeling sore and overtrained and fatigued, having to defend yourself on the street that way, or even worse, fighting for a title in that condition, or not training enough, feeling underprepared. You have energy or some energy because you trained a little bit, but you feel like you're not ready. I don't know what's worse. So we're here to turn to a professional to ask. I'm sure you've seen some of your guys go through this, some of your girls and guys go through this. What's your opinion on this?
Okay. This is a complicated one. And I think there's a long answer and a short answer. So I'll give you both.
All right.
No, what happens is undertraining is very it very seldom happens for you guys that own martial arts schools. There's hardly any overtraining. Mainly there's not for a couple of reasons. For a few reasons. One of them is most traditional martial arts schools, you just don't train hard enough to get overtrained. You have to push the limit either too frequently or go too high. You know what I mean? Both overtraining. You can not train too hard, but never take a day off and never rest and overtrain that way. And then or you could just train past your limit in, you know, one or more of your weekly workouts, and you get the volume up too high, or even the intensity. That could set you over the top too. Most people don't do it when they're training in a traditional martial arts gym. There's not enough of either. There's not enough of really, really, really hard work or hard work every day. Like most guys train twice a week, even three times a week. You're not going to get overtrained. Um, so that doesn't happen very often, but it does happen more often um, in for MMA fighters because they tend to go to the gym 5 or 6 days a week. Um, they tend to train a little harder each workout, and uh, they train with a lot more intensity. I don't know why that is. I think it's really funny because what that actually says is that the average man in the United States um, wouldn't risk or wouldn't invest the time and the energy um, to protect their families as some younger guy that wants to win a UFC title. He's willing to put in more time and energy training than somebody that's training to protect their family. How does that even come close to making sense?
And it's not even like you said UFC title. I'll argue even someone who's not even at the point of the UFC title, like they would like to maybe one day have a
Yeah,
tryout in the UFC. They're still fighting for the little plastic trophy or the pat on the back and a
yeah.
smoker.
Well, when I say they're training for the UFC title, that's from the guy from his first amateur fight until the title because that's their goal.
Yeah.
So to have a goal um, that they want to win any type of sport, and they're willing to put in more, suffer and sacrifice more than someone that's trying to train to protect their family's life. That bothers me to say that, but it's true. Um, I mean, that's weird. I mean, anyway, so what's worse, training? But the truth is, it's the truth. That's the bad thing. The truth is, it's the truth. So traditional martial arts guys very seldom overtrain. you very seldom see it. Um, for the fighter that's fighting for UFC title or Bellator or Tattoo Palace or whatever, they tend to train and push a little more, and they see somebody that they're fighting, so it makes it a little more realistic when they're training. Because when you're training for the street, right, there's not a specific person in mind. So it doesn't make it as easy to visualize it. So, and when you visualize it, you tend to put in more, and then you train with more intensity. So I have seen sport fighters overtrain. Court McGee used to overtrain all the time. He would push so hard, it's crazy. Glover Teixeira, you wouldn't think as much at Glover as you do Court, because Court's a lot more, he's a high strung guy and he's like more go, go, go. And Glover's kind of more laid back. But when it comes to training, Glover is a fucking beast. I mean, when we were doing CrossFit and we were go to Santa Cruz a lot for the CrossFit stuff, I mean, Glover could compete with those guys at their thing. I mean, just at doing CrossFit. He wouldn't have won the CrossFit Games, but he did win a UFC title. But he still could compete with the average CrossFit guy. But he tended to overtrain. So you would think it's just the high strung guy that wants to push, push, push and train too hard. But even the laid back guys like Glover, he when it came to training, he tended to overtrain. So what's worse, you know?
And could it be also that you're a guy who's doing sport MMA,
Yeah.
given he's going to have to, he's not going to be able to settle into just one program. He's going to have to cross train. He's going to have to do a combination of grappling, striking. He might be in his main MMA program, but he's usually always training at different places, not just one place. While your average person is usually just kind of going to just one place and relying on whatever's being given to them. So if they're lucky enough to be training with you, they're going to get the full package, but they might not be that lucky. Do you think that might be something that's in play here?
Now, dividing the different genres, I don't see that as because when people do that, they usually don't overdo it um, per se. They'll just take a little here and there, and they'll take the prescribed doses. Whereas people with the mentality like Court McGee, they don't like to take it in the prescribed dose. They like to take more. Like say they're making a cake, they think it's going to be better if you put more sugar,
Double
even when it
chocolate.
gets too sweet. You know what I mean? So that's the way someone like Court is, or even Glover. So they put too much of one ingredient in, and that kind of ruins the whole recipe. Where some people aren't so anal, or I don't know what the word is, but they're willing to just know that they're going to take the right amount, and then they're going to get the right taste in the recipe, right? So some guys are mainly strikers, and they don't even really pay attention on some of the other stuff. They're putting too much sugar, right? It's going to be too sweet. But if people know that if I'm gonna spend more time with the grappling, I should spend more time, or the striking, I should spend more time with the grappling, and then I'll make that even, where I'll do a little bit more with the takedowns. So then they're getting the right ingredients. The cake's going to be better. But some people want to overdo. It's usually one thing, that they'll overdo, and a lot of times it's the conditioning. Because a lot of people think, hey, hell, I'll run, a mile, that's good. If I run 5 miles, it's even better. Hey, if I run 10 miles, it's even better. And now you're starting to physically overtrain. When
Oh,
that's the Glover, that's the Court. If 1 mile is good, 10 miles is better.
That reminds me of the time I fucked up right 2 weeks, 3 weeks before a fight. I didn't have a coach, so I was kind of doing this on my own. This is before I met you. I thought that running a ultra marathon would help me cut weight and prepare me for the fight because under the same mentality, if 2 miles is good, 3 miles is better. So I figured, oh, I'll do an ultra marathon 3 weeks before the fight. It'll help me cut weight, and I'll have way more endurance. 3 weeks out of the fight, and what happened was I just killed myself 2 weeks before the fight. Had to spend a week to recover from the ultra marathon. Lost that final week of training where you're supposed to push really hard, and it all went down the drain. It all went down into the drain. I got into that fight just exhausted.
Yeah, a lot of people
I made weight. That's all I did though.
And a lot of people, a lot of people cutting weight. We don't call that overtraining. We call that dehydrating. But I mean, a lot of people do that by overdoing it. We know that. I mean, we've seen them pass out and how many fights they've had to cancel on the UFC because somebody fucked up. Not that many anymore because people have it dialed in, but it still happens now. But I mean, the overtraining comes from like I said, just doing too much of everything and just overboarding it, or just taking one thing and just pushing it really hard. That's how usually an MMA fighter is overtrained. And the way I like to explain it is, you want to be here for the fight, where this is your, you want to be perfectly in tune for the fight. You want to be prepped and primed, you know, and you want to be right there. You want to be, you're prime. You're peaked. Okay, you can call it whatever you want, but when you train just right, you hit that peak, and then if you keep training that same way, you're gonna pass it, right? So because time and volume is increased volume. So doing that causes that a lot. And when you do that, everything goes bad. Everything goes bad. When you're undertrained just a little bit, then you're almost at everything. Your gas isn't quite there, but it's not over there. It's not what happens when you overgas, you get stale. Just like you just get like bored and stale. It's like going out with this girl and she's so nice and you wanna stay with her because she's such a nice person, but she just bores you. And there's nothing there. There's no attraction. You want it so bad because she's such a nice person, but there's just no attraction. It's just like it's gone.
No
And that's
pizzazz.
when you overtrain for a fight. It's just gone. The feel No, it's a very similar thing. It goes. It just you don't have that. Oh, I want to kill him. I want to knock him out. I want to win. That goes. Then you're just kind of bored. You're like, and you watch fighters in a fight. You hear guys like DC that's been around so long. They could watch a fight sometimes and we go, "Ooh, the guy looks like he's overtrained," and it shows in a fight. You know what I mean? Just like it will in the relationship, it does in a fight.
What's that one song? The thrill is gone. The thrill is
It's gone.
gone.
And you can't get it back. It's really just like with that girl, you think of all these good things about her, but you can't get that feeling back. You can pretend it's there, but just like the fight, you can't get that feeling back. The only thing that'll bring that feeling down is time. Now you take a week off, don't even train, and you start coming back to where you should be or right below it. And that's where you want to live. You want to live right under your peak. And then if you have a fight coming up and you're able to train for it like a sport fight, then you try to train a little harder till you get right here. Then you stay there. And you can tell a lot of times, a lot of people when they're training, they go, oh, I'm overtrained. I got to take a day off. Or if you have a really good coach, they'll say, hey, you look a little overtrained. Take a day off. I'll see you, whatever. So undertraining, undertraining depending on how far, but let's just say it's the same amount. So I mean, if you overtrained over here, that's one thing. What if you just overtrained right over here or undertrained right under here? Which one's worse? I say over here is worse because you passed that. Now you're already on your way out. You don't want it anymore. When you're right here, you still want it real bad. You don't have it yet, but you still want it. You know what I mean? So your timing isn't perfect yet, but it's not completely gone. So the relationship is not quite done yet. So you still got something left. Boom, it's gone. That's how I like to explain overtraining and undertraining.
And what do you think is easier to correct, undertraining or overtraining?
Let's say you're a week out. If you're a week out and it's the same amount, because if you're way undertrained, you'll never make it. And if you're way overtrained, you'll never come back. But if you had to be the same, I would think it's easier. I would think that it's easier to just rest and try to get back here than it would be to work to get there, because this is more incremental. This can happen quicker. Once you're overtrained, you can take a week off and not be overtrained anymore. You can't take a week off if you're truly undertrained.
Yeah,
So
ramping up might put you over the limit actually. So it's
yeah,
easy. So under that answer, it's easier to correct overtraining than it is undertraining.
yes, yeah. Now, if it was farther apart, if you were farther overtrained, right, and then less undertrained, then it would be the other way. But if they're both equal, getting back to getting back to peak is easier than getting to peak.
So according to that explanation, if you're one of those people if you're one of those people that's not training to fight, you're your average person who comes in twice a week to do whatever martial arts training, if you're in a quote unquote traditional school, or even if you're just a hobbyist doing, let's say, something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu twice a week, working your way through the system, um, you pretty much don't have to worry about overtraining.
No. That's why I said almost all overtraining I see is fighters. I have one student that overtrains, and I got to pull him back sometimes. He wants to fight someday. He's never fought. He does my regular classes, but he was wanting to be a fighter. So he kind of trains like a fighter, but not really. But he'd be the only guy that's in my class that I would consider always on the urge of pushing it too hard. And you know what happens when you overtrain regularly? Like your average runner that runs a little too far all the time, they're going to get injured all the time. I mean, that's one of the first things that happens when you overtrain is your injuries become more frequent. And that's why when you're right undertrained, right under your peak, they don't, because you still got some more left. Here, you're kind of like all of your immune system and everything is kind of overdone, and you can get sicker. You can get sicker, and you can get injured more. And then when you're right under, you can't. But if you go farther, I mean, the worst conditioning you get in, then it starts coming up.
So,
Your chance of getting sick and injured from undertraining. But most people, most martial artists don't stay that far under. Usually, studio guys are over here, traditional guys are over here, and fighters might be like over here. So, your average American is way under here, so he's going to get sick and injured a lot anyway, right?
so really, I mean, yeah. So the only person, I guess, the only average person, well, maybe they're not that average actually, that has to kind of worry about the overtraining, like the average person that's not professionally fighting, that's doing martial arts training, that does have to kind of worry about overtraining, would be someone doing cross training. Let's say they are a runner or they're a triathlete, like they're doing a second sport that involves a lot of cardio on top of the martial arts training. That person
Yeah.
is now doing a secondary sport that may push them into that overtraining zone. That's the only other person I can think of but that person's not average, to be honest. I know every
Yeah,
time,
he's not. I mean,
yeah, like every time I do triathlete training, and every time I brought that up to the places I trained at, they were just surprised I was doing anything but jujitsu because the jujitsu guys only do jujitsu. Um,
and they're
question.
usually not in that great shape.
No,
So
that's a whole other topic. I don't know. That's a whole other bag of worms, whole other can of worms. The jiu-jitsu philosophy that you don't have strength. They're like allergic to strength and condition. They're scared. Don't get too strong. Too strong. I've never
but
heard the
that
words too strong while sparring until I started doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu. That's too strong. What? What are you talking about? Too strong.
yeah. Well, I think where that came from, to be fair, um, I think because the littler guys did it more because then they could use the leverage and stuff like that. So that's been a big selling point, just like it was for Aikido. Not as much judo. I think judo has always been pretty much a power game. But then when jiu-jitsu became Brazilian jiu-jitsu, then they everything's in weight classes, so it kind of doesn't apply anymore. But I guess in the very beginning, when they did it, they were small. Wasn't Helio small or
Yeah,
something?
Helio was a small guy. He was a small guy.
So anyway, that's my overtraining, undertraining. I have good analogies with it.
Yeah, and here's a question here. I have two questions. Zen asks, did Bruce Lee overtrain?
I don't know. I mean, the only way you can tell if someone's overtraining is if you're either training them or you're them.
Yeah. Well, for you, Zen, the books I've read on Bruce Lee's life, and also I recently finished Chuck Norris's book when he did a lot of training with Bruce Lee as well. Towards the end of his life, it wasn't so much that Bruce Lee was overtraining, he was always training, he was overworking. So there was a few incidents where he passed out on set, and
Yeah.
they were saying it was because of heat exhaustion. When he recorded that scene in Enter the Dragon, he passed out, and they were saying that he wasn't drinking enough water. He was cutting a lot of weight to have that super ripped look that he had. So he was dehydrating himself, and he passed out on set a few
Yeah.
times, and that happened. And Chuck Norris was worried about him. He's like, "How's this guy?" He mentioned it in his book. Bruce was talking to him in private about how he was passing out on set, and he was working like just every day, no days off. And Chuck was kind of worried about him towards the end of his life, and then eventually, he had the brain aneurysm. So yeah, so to answer your question, it wasn't so much that he overtrained, he just overworked. The guy was working every day, 16-hour days, and training in between everything, and dehydrating himself, and not eating properly. Um, and that's what led to him to not to die. That's a total other subject. But as far as his overtraining, I would say more overworking. John Cox, how do you balance CrossFit training sessions with skill training prior to a fight?
Um. Yeah. You have to do it carefully. It's That's why I brought CrossFit into the picture instead of CrossFit. One reason is because when you're doing CrossFit, you're doing you're adding something to everything we're already doing. Like we're doing jujitsu, we're doing wrestling, we're doing striking, we're doing physical conditioning. Um, Now that's all separate. But now when you start mixing them up, right? Start saying when you're hitting the bag, you're just doing burpees too. Burpee bag. Now you just taken now burpees aren't CrossFit specific, but something they do a lot of in CrossFit. And then bag, something we do. So now we got CrossFit instead of CrossFit because the workout combines with the skill building. Like I did a CrossFit workout last night, and it was burpees, bag, and shadow box. And the shadow box was kind of the slower, right? Get your heart rate down because you can't do anything until you get it down a little bit. And then they would do burpees to get the heart rate up. They go on the bag to simulate a fight with their heart rate already up. So you can just pull back and do burpees again, and then bag again, and then come back into shadow box again. However you want to mix it up, you try to simulate a fight. And then during a fight, just like during a race, you can't keep that heart rate up. You just can't keep your everybody has a different one, but nobody can keep it up for very long at high intensity. So that has to be high intensity interval training. So I mix that up a lot with with the skill drill, like sparring. I get out and do 8 counts, and then spar, and then grapple, and then strike, and then 8 counts, and then something that'll get their heart rate up in between their sparring or their grappling is a great way to get in shape for any type of fight, street or sport, because you are not going to get in top shape grappling or sparring. You're just not, because there's too much injuries involved. So that's a whole different topic.
Yeah.
But basically, that combining CrossFit with skill is better than doing it, including it, as a different, like, you separate them all. Sometimes you have to do that, very seldom. Like, sometimes I just want them to hit the bag because I want them to focus on a lot of volume on punching. Sometimes I just have them kick the bag. Sometimes they just grapple off from the bottom because I want volume, volume, volume. And then sometimes I just go freestyle and mix it all up. You know what I mean? So then you get the taste of the combinations. But sometimes you want to focus on one thing because you want a high volume of that, because you get better at that one thing. So, and that could lend to too much of that can lend to overtraining as well.
All right.
Mentally and physically.
So John Cox, who asked the question, says thanks. So all ones says, how many days and hours a week should a non-pro fighter train? We've answered this before. We did a whole podcast on this, but a whole live on this before. But you already have this down, and you to a certain amount of days a week. So, John, how many days a week and hours a week should a non-pro fighter train? Someone who's just casually training.
I think if you're a man and you care at all for your family, and that you might have to protect them someday, and when you do, you'll be able to, I think you should be training at least 5 hours a week. And that's usually 5 days. So, you can do an hour, half an hour one day, an hour and a half the next, or mix it up however you want, or just make it simple and do an hour a day. I do that. I try to do an hour a day. Sometimes it runs a little over because I do some specific stuff. Sometimes I got to go somewhere, so it's 45 minutes, never less than 45 minutes. But I do average 5 hours a week in any given week. And I think that's the least you can do if you want to stay in any kind of shape and skill level and strength where you are going to be able to protect your family. If you train less than that, I mean, it depends how much less you care about your family. So you can go down incrementally.
Depending on how much you don't like your family, you can start taking off.
Then you train less. But if you care about your family and you want to protect them if they're ever attacked, hopefully not, but if they are, then you should be training at least 5 hours a week.
All right. So there you go, all ones. Mr. Awak, on the topic of Bruce Lee, drugs, bro. Yeah, I know. Yeah, there was that too. And that's a whole other topic for Bruce Lee and drugs. I'm still doing research on that, but they did find during his autopsy, they said they found marijuana in his system, and there was rumors that on top of these are all rumors and speculation, which is why I don't like talking about it too much. But in the books and the autobiographies that I read, not the autobiography, the biographies I read of the people around his life, they were saying that there was a lot of drug use around him. So yeah, that might be a possibility as well. Now, Mac Trey. Oh boy, Mac Trey. I avoid these kind of questions, Mac Trey. I got a question for Angelo. Jeez, why me? I'm a fan of Social Jello podcast. Thank you. That's a podcast I do outside of this one. What's your thoughts on current society, American and global, through your perspective? Good Lord. I don't like answering this kind of question. What are my thoughts about current society in America through my global perspective? I have to be careful with this question because, like you just said, I don't live in America. Me and John have talked about this before, so I have wacky ideas about how life is and my observations of America. And I'm a weirdo. What can I say? When you look at expats, I think it's like 1% of people actually live outside of the United States, and that's me. But from my perspective, looking at the US, I feel like online everyone looks like they're trying to kill each other all the time from different perspectives, politically and socially. But whenever I go visit, when I'm actually there in person, talking to people face to face, people are pretty nice. So I don't know. For my interactions personally, when I go to the US, everything seems fine. If you look at it from the internet or from the news, it looks like it's falling apart. So I guess that would be my perspective. So, John's there. John, is it falling apart? Is American society falling apart in front of you?
Um, yes and no. I think yes, in what I'm seeing more like you said. I'm seeing more on social media and the news. But they're getting. I mean, you just watch the Olympics. What happened in the beginning of the Olympics? That's not the United States, but I think it was pretty much United States. Um, I think it started here that, but that kind of stuff, when you watch people just acting so just pathological and evil and just ridiculous. I mean, it's like fucking. You just look around. It's just the weakness and the softness and it's pretty scary. I see it a lot, even more on social media. It looks like there's more than I noticed, but maybe I'm in, just where I am. But I go to LA too, so I see it, and it's terrible. A lot worse than I thought it would ever be here in my whole life. But it's not quite as bad as if you spend a lot of time watching TV.
Yeah, that's how I felt. Like I thought. So you asked me, Max was asking about my global perspective. It was very skewed by my social media perspective. So I was actually kind of surprised. If I followed social media at one point when I came to visit a few years last year, it looked like it looked like people were gonna, riot in the street. And then when I got here, and they did before, and they did. But when I got here, I didn't see any riots. I saw people from different perspectives hanging out, and my
I don't
social
see that
circle
as
was limited.
much. I don't.
So
I don't see like I mean, unless it's my blood family, like a kid, one of my kids. Um, like I have no desire to speak with. I don't feel it's politics anymore. I think it used to be politics when I was younger. Like if you disagree, but now I think it's morals. I think it's morals and ethical, qualities and lack of. So when I talk to someone that votes that way, I look at them as not a good person. I don't think there's many good people that could believe in the things that they're believing in. Like, when they see they do this, I'll give you an example. You open the borders. Now you see, 50,000 of our youth are going to die every year because of fentanyl directly because of the open borders. And then they still vote for that and support it. that I look at them and I just think that cannot be a good person. They just can't be someone I really want to hang out with.
Yeah, there it is. So, all right, next question. Like I said earlier, before I answer that question, John knows I avoid those questions. so back to you, put me in a corner. But I answered it for you. There you go, brother.
Whether that shows up on this video or not is yet to be seen.
Yeah. Zen Baron. I don't know about not eating properly. Oh yeah, Zen. I mean, he ate great. Back to Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee did eat properly. He was just on set, known for not having time to eat. That was the problem he was having. Mr. Alwak, John, I signed up for your online dojo. Thank you. I'll say thank you for John. Where are your conditioning requirements? I'm trying to get my wife on board to have someone to train with, but I might have to go solo for a while. Will this be a problem? Do I need someone to train with? So I'm adding to his question. Does he need someone to train with for your online program, or is it okay to do it solo?
Eventually you will. But for the first few belts, you won't really. It's better if you do, much better. But you don't. It's not 100% mandatory. But it will be, just like anywhere you train, you'll need a partner, a sparring partner, a drilling partner. With us, it's not, I need to see sparring until it gets later. But I do want to see some of the techniques, some of the punching techniques. I like to see the power of it, so holding something. But if you have a heavy bag, that's okay. And then there's some, escapes I want to see. So you will eventually need a partner. So I mean, everybody has a friend. I mean, it could be your wife. So yeah.
So Mr. Awak, if you can't convince your wife to do it, maybe you can convince a friend. But eventually you will need a second person.
Yeah.
Mac Trey, how do I prepare for a jiu-jitsu competition?
How do you prepare for this? It's like go into your class, just go into your classes regular, right? Learn the techniques like you regular do, but now you need to step it up if you're going to do gi or no gi, and whichever one you are going to go, and you need to enter more free grappling sessions like drilling or sparring, and then still go to the amount of classes you want to go to learn. So there should be a learning section of every class, and then a drilling session, and then usually some kind of free rolling or freestyle section of every class. You know what I mean? They don't usually have sparring or drilling, or not drilling, but conditioning like we do. But that then you find a conditioning program that you think is going to fit. Now modify it because you do so much grappling and jiu-jitsu. Like if you did CrossFit, do make 1/4 of their workout of the day, and because you're doing so much other volume, you would definitely overtrain if you tried to be a full CrossFit guy and a full jiu-jitsu guy. You can't do both.
No. And then as someone who's I love doing jiu-jitsu. I've got a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. And the times I did have to compete, because I was also doing MMA at the time. If you're one of those guys that's doing multiple stuff, you are gonna have to think about your training. And like John said, be specific, because depending on the program you're training at, they might have gi or no gi. If you're doing no gi, do more no gi. There's a big difference between gi and no gi. And then I'll also add that while you're doing your personal conditioning training, if you feel tired for some reason, like you feel like you can't do that extra rep, whatever, just leave one on the rack for the next day. Because that's like we were saying earlier in the program, when you do more stuff, now you're getting closer to that overtraining thing. So if you're one of those guys that's doing a lot of stuff and you're doing jiu-jitsu, keep an eye on that. Where are we? There's a lot of questions coming in. I don't know about eating properly. John signed up. Okay. Oh, DL asks, what are your recommendations for a girlfriend and how to support her partner training? Oh, okay. That's a very specific question. What are your recommendations for a girlfriend and how to support her training for a jiu-jitsu competition? Okay, a lot of jiu-jitsu questions today for you, John. So the question is, how do you support your girlfriend getting ready for a jiu-jitsu competition?
Just, um, just be there for her and make sure she only grapples with other girls.
There you
Because
go.
she's not gonna grapple with a guy in the tournament. So there's never gonna be a reason for her to grapple with a guy outside of the tournament.
There you go. So find her some female training partners to practice her techniques with. Zen, they put on his medication. Aspirin on his medication. Oh, okay, I'm talking about Bruce. Yes. Um, that that cause could kill the okay, that could have killed him. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of speculation how Bruce Lee died.
What?
Um,
Then what? He took aspirin?
no, they were saying something that he was allergic to aspirin, and that someone that was the other thing I read was that someone gave him some medication for a headache, and it was a prescription medication that had aspirin in it, and he was allergic to aspirin, and that's what caused the brain aneurysm. But to be honest, a lot of the stuff I read, there's still no in the medical report. It just says brain aneurysm, and there's not. And plus, he died in China, so or Hong Kong, I think it was. That's where I have to check. But he died overseas. So that adds even more weirdness to that report. Um, Ovid Van Sickle. That's an awesome name. What would be a good number of burpees to start with in order to build up?
I'll give you. Okay. You should be able to do at least um, at least 70 burpees in 7 minutes. Okay. And that should be your minimum. And then if you want to step it up to more advanced, you should be able to get to 90. And then if you do that, you are getting in really good shape. If you can do 90 burpees all the way down with a little jump up at the top and into a fighting stance, and just that's your burpee. And if you can do 90 of them in 7 minutes, you're really in good shape.
All right, there you go. 90 in 7 minutes. John Cox. I'm a delivery driver. Everybody's cool until you talk politics. Yeah. Jesse, John Hackelman is the man. There you go, bro. Thumbs up. He put an emoji thumbs up. If you don't have this training partner, could you start a fight in a bar? You could. I don't recommend it.
Okay.
Although I did think it'd be hilarious if you walked into a bar,
No.
full sparring gear on, mouthpiece, helmet, gloves.
Make the bar you go to somebody in there you don't like your sparring partner.
There you go. There you go.
They'd be drunk anyway. Usually, if they're drunk, then actually don't do that. If he doesn't, don't do that against his will. I don't want to. I don't want to be responsible for another bar killing.
You know what I can say is, all jokes aside, I used to have a business card with my credentials as a martial arts instructor, and I just hand that to people to come out and spar, not at a bar, not at a bar, but if I heard people talking about fighting or whatever, and they're having a conversation like, "Hey, if you guys are interested in martial arts training, you want to train? I train at the park."
Oh, here's one of my favorite bar sparring. I sparred at a bar, but there's one Hell's Angel guy, and we used to have Hell's Angel parking where I used to work because there's a lot of Hell's Angels in there. It was a pretty rough bar, and it's weird because it's in one of the best, well-known, rich areas in LA, Calabasas. I mean, that's where the Kardashians live. You know, that's where a lot of movie stars live in Calabasas. But anyway, I used to work at a bar there, which wasn't. It was a rough bar because not because it was in the ghetto, but it was just people like to go there from all over, and it was on the way from the beach back to LA, where so a lot of people were from the beach all day on a weekend. They'd show up there. A lot of Harley guys, a lot of Hell's Angels. Anyway, so it was a pretty rough bar, and I'm a bouncer, but I'm kind of in the middle of my career. People recognize me. They came in the bar sometimes, like, "Hey, you fought on," And I was like, "Yeah." So some Hell's Angel guy he was kind of mocking me, but kind of joking in a funny way, but saying he could kick my ass. And I was like, let's go, bro. Let's go. So went to the back, the parking lot, and he wasn't trying to hurt me. You know, well, he was when it started, but he didn't dislike me. He just wanted to spar with some guy that was known as a fighter because he's the Hell's Angels. He wants to do that in front of his buddies. So I was like, let's go, bro. So we go in the back and we square off and we start going. And I crack him a couple times. And all of a sudden I hit him and he kind of bends over and then he touches his ear. He goes, fuck, my earring's gone. And he had a Hell's Angels earring. They take their stuff very seriously. Like I was at his house once. He had a Hell's Angel, vest, like the leather vest. I don't want to try it on. He wouldn't even let me try it on. He said, basically, I'll have to kill you if you do. I mean, they take their shit serious. Oh, so he had this earring. So we're in the parking lot of this place. It's called the Sagebrush Cantina. And he's looking around, it's dark, and he's looking under the cars because we're in the parking lot. Somebody had to get a flashlight. He's like, it fell and it like slid all the way into our car. And he's like looking for this. And I just got done pounding him a few times too. So it was even funnier. And he's looking, he finds it and he gets it, he puts it back in, and then we go back in and he just goes and starts drinking again. But him and his buddy, another Hell's Angel, they actually joined. They're like one of my original pit guys. And he would take his shirt off and when they train in the summer, and my wife would at the time, my ex-wife, she would like, why are there Hell's Angels in my backyard? Because the gym was in my backyard, and she thought it was, and they'd walk through the house to get out of my gym because my gym was in the backyard, and the house kind of went all the way up to the sides of the lot, so they had to come through the house, and my wife would just be like, why are there Hell's Angels in my house, John? But anyway, so that was funny. But I don't know.
So John Cox, the answer is yes. Surprisingly, if you don't have a training partner, you could find one at a bar. That's how John found his Hell's Angels sparring partners. Feel free to do so
if you don't have
at your own risk.
If you don't have a sparring partner, you don't really need one, but you do need a drilling partner.
And you can find
there's the right answer. The right answer is it's better to have both, but if you don't have a sparring partner, you at least need a drilling partner.
There you
go. If you don't, and you just have a heavy bag or a bob, you'll never be as good as if you have a drilling partner, but you'll be better than you would be without the heavy bag at all.
But all jokes aside, you found a tough guy. They'll join you. You might start at the bar, but you might end up at a park or in your backyard, like John. So like, you never know until you'll ask. You'll never know until you ask. The worst thing they can say is no, John. John Cox, Mr. Awak, what happened to Pitmaster and the Doc podcast? Someone's asked this before, but you can answer it again.
He had it was my partner James. He happens to be one of my best friends, and he trains here at the pit. But he's a local orthopedist, orthopedic surgeon, and he trains, and he has 4 kids. His kids started getting busier, and we were going for he was going for his black belt, and he had to be gone a lot more, and he's just overwhelmed. He's got too much going on.
So there you go, Mr. Rock. He had too much going on. Zen Baron. Okay, so he's talking about my political answer about when I went to the US. Okay, so no, when you meet people in the US, I don't think anyone will mess with you. Like I said, everything was pretty smooth sailing when I went to the US, except for that one crackhead that tried to start some shit with my wife, but that had nothing to do with politics. That was just ridiculousness. Either way. Yeah, that's a total different story. I don't want to go there right now. Zen Baron, Kowloon, right on. Ovids Van Sickle. Thank you. You're welcome. Mac Trey, what specific conditioning would you, and I say I'm adding to your question there, Mac Trey. What specific conditioning do you recommend before a jiu-jitsu competition? Because I want to be in tip-top shape.
I mean, it's pretty much the same as any thing, as any combat sport. You need explosive, and it can all be interchanged. You can do some specific stuff like grappling drills, like takedowns with a burpee, takedown with a burpee, takedown with a burpee. You're gonna fucking get exhausted. Row, 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 and then get on the bottom. Somebody mounts you, side control while you're exhausted. Put yourself in terrible positions while you're exhausted. Do like 10 burpees in a row, then just get on your back and let someone get on top of you and start trying to attack you from the top and try to get out while you're exhausted. Then also do work where it simulates anything you're going to do. You're doing a lot of pushing, so do a lot of pushing, whether it's weights or push-ups. Do a lot of it. You're going to do a lot of pulling because grappling involves a lot of pulling, so do a lot of pulling, a lot of rowing, something where you're using your pulling muscles. You're going to use your legs, do a lot of dynamic leg work with and without weights. All, and that involves pretty much all combat sports. So you have to work your explosive muscles. You have to explode. You have to work your slow twitch muscle fibers, like 2 or 3 times a week. Go out and do something somewhat hard and somewhat long, like 15 minutes of jogging at a certain pace where you can still talk, but you can't sing, right? Because so you get your heart rate up to that level, and then do like once or twice a week, stuff where you get so high you can't even talk at all. All you can do is try to breathe and do like 20 seconds of that, 20 seconds off, and do that for like 5 to 10 minutes, depending on what kind of training you're doing that day. So
So,
you need anaerobic work, aerobic work, strength work, and explosive work.
all right, so there it is. And then also, I don't know what kind of jiu-jitsu program you're in, Mac Trey, but if they're not doing a lot of conditioning, you you're going to look like a madman. But whatever drills, whatever sparring time they give you like a 30-second break. Don't take breaks. Just go at it. If on some days, don't just go at it. Do burpees in between the breaks if you really want to push yourself. If you feel your program isn't pushing you enough, do burpees in between everything, and it'll drastically change things for you. David Kipper, greetings from Taiwan. Greetings. I took the online hook course. It was dope. Nice. Another shout out to the pit.tv. Shameless plug. Still open spots available if you want to sign up for online courses like the online hook course. John Cox says, thanks again. You're welcome. Zem Baron, that's where Bruce Lee passed away. Oh, Kowloon. Oh, okay, thanks. That's what you were saying earlier. Kowloon is where he passed away. Yeah, there it is. Mr. Awak. So 70 burpees in 7 minutes is the median goal, but where does one start? So like it wasn't 70. Wasn't it 90 burpees? I thought it was 90 burpees in 7 minutes.
That's where you want to 90 burpees is like
The ultimate goal.
I'm gonna say red belt. So
Okay.
if you go blue, green, red, brown, it would be like red belt.
Okay. So it's like almost at the top.
And then if
70
you
more.
want to go to yellow belt, you should be able to do 7 minutes. You should be able to do probably 40 would be, like a yellow orange belt.
And he's saying the beginning. So he's saying, where do you start? So
You started, I don't know where you start. You could start at maybe you could do 125. Maybe you could start there.
okay.
But
With no
most
timer.
people would start about 30 in 7 minutes. That would push them. Somebody without any conditioning, 25 or 30 would be a start. Like if you're a white belt.
Yeah. And a good way to do this, Mr. Awak, is just count them out, man. Put the timer
Yeah.
on for 7 minutes, see how many you did, John said it should be 30, but everyone starts. We don't know what you look like. So we don't really look at your name, Mr. Awa.
Yeah, when I
We
say
have no
30,
idea
I'm
what your
talking
back.
about,
I don't know how old you are. We don't have enough information. So I would just put 7 minutes on there, see what you hit, and then
yeah,
go from there. And then try to add more from there. But you're
yeah.
not going to know where you're at until you just hit the timer and just don't give up in those 7. If you've never done burpees before, good Lord, good luck. Just try to do 7 minutes of burpees and see how many you did.
And burpees is a good one, um, because there's no skill involved. Like we used to do double unders, and like once you get to 100 double unders, that's really good. But it takes a lot of skill and coordination to get double unders. Even pull-ups take more skill, like thrusters or man making. A lot of these exercises take some skill and strength. I want to take skill out of the equation, so I do something so simple that anyone could do burpees. There's no skill involved, but it does take a lot of conditioning.
Yeah. And the biggest problem I had with pull ups is some people can't do pull ups. Some people
Yeah.
come in off off the sidewalk. I say street because I don't want to say street because it makes them sound rough. Some soccer mom comes in and can't do a pull up. But they can do a burpee. Anyone can do a burpee. I do love that about burpees as well.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, one more. Jesse, hey, I'm sure most folks these days can't even do two burpees. You'd be surprised, Jesse. You'd be surprised how many people could actually do a burpee if they want to. If they want to. You have to want to do a burpee
Yeah.
before you do a burpee. But once you've made that decision to do a burpee, you can at least do one or two. That's my argument. All right. Wow, we did it. That was a flood of comments. We really appreciate that. Again, I always say if you have any questions, I will bring them in as we roll along with the show. But this has been another episode of the Live Clean and Fight Dirty show. Once a week, 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, every Wednesday. You can join John Hackelman and ask him any question you want. Your co-host and